everything happened at once. I got a boyfriend. My parents moved up.
My girlfriend takes up a bunch of my time too.
Why do you say things to be sad?
So it's fun bumming you out with my
No, I
depression.
don't like it. It's not nice. You dick. Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast. Despite the fact that we are not very big on a lot of podcasting platforms, but we are on YouTube, Unresolved Textual Tension. It is I, your host, Maria, with my rugged and handsome co-host, William.
What's up?
So
Super rugged, super handsome today. And today, the book we're doing is Ancillary Justice by Ann Leckie. And the reason I picked this book is because it was one of the nominations on our Patreon book club, which, by the way, go join our Patreon. We get to do lots of cool stuff. So while I was going through which ones I wanted to put in the poll, I was really interested in the premise, which is that it's about a Warship AI, which is now stuck in one person. And that, to me, I have always been really fascinated in AI and how AI think and how that differs from humans. And especially because at that point, we had just finished reading Murderbot, which is a long story. I will put up the the card for it so you can check out that video here or here, depending on whether it's mirrored or not. And anyway, so I thought this would be an interesting contrast to see how it does it differently. And what were your impressions of the book, Maria?
There is a lot of things this book did well, and it finally, down to one character, one fucking character won me over in the end. And you know probably who that character is, I would imagine. This writer is really talented in a lot of ways. The prose is so clean. It's sparse in a way that, so with Murderbot, we leveled against it that the world and visuals were not very clear, not very developed, and it just felt like the byproduct of being novellas, that there's not a lot of time to spend on description. This book feels sparse in the visuals of it, but it feels intentional, and through that sparseness you get a lot of things. What is chosen to be focused on and described in detail has impact, which I enjoyed. And the concepts, the world of this is fascinating. There's so much good little world building things. The beginning is, oh boy, a lot of stuff. names, things. No. You're just, it's too much, especially in audiobook format. I literally had to stop, look up a list of characters, and orient myself. And then there's terms like a decade. That's not 10 years, my guys. It is a group of ancillaries. What's an ancillary, you might be asking? So there's a lot of terms that just get thrown at you, and we'll explain all of that in a bit. So it took a second to get past that, but once I did, I really liked the world. I liked the idea, the cultures she built, though I'd say only two feel really, really distinct. The big issue I had with this is that I really struggled, and Will and I spoke about this, getting invested in the book. When I was listening, I was interested, I was invested, I could listen for 45 minutes at a time. But the minute I hit pause, because I had to do something, I had to remind myself to pick it back up, versus when we were reading Uprooted or Nona recently, where I was like, no, give me. I'd pause and be like, I cannot wait to give. And for some reason, that didn't happen with this book. Something Will and I have spoken about is narrative distance. How close a character is to what is happening emotionally. And this book, the main character has, and Will loves this, it gives him what he describes as a literary, highbrow feel.
Exactly. It's like, oh, this is real literature, not which is hilarious because that's how I want to write, but how I actually write is fanfic trash.
Yep.
And so those two things are constantly at war in what I like. I had been the one who came up with the concept of when we put it down, we weren't interested in it. Maria just stole it. But I was the one who originated that idea, for the record. Because it really was one of these things where I would have kind of trouble remembering what was happening if I wasn't reading it. It's kind of like a pastel painting, and that the colors just aren't very vivid. So it's nice to listen to or to look at in this metaphor, but you kind of, after a little bit, are like, okay, but I don't really want to go back. Like,
What was that blob over there?
exactly. And it's like, I liked this book and I even liked how it ended, but I don't want to read a sequel. Like, I just don't. This It's a lot to get through in certain ways. And so there's a lot to like, but there's also a lot to forget almost.
I think the fundamental problem for me that I've come to terms with is there's too much distance from the characters and too many it took me way too long to really attach myself to a character and become invested in them. And in this instance, with the main character, it took until the very like last third of the book for that to really kick in. When we finally got her inciting incident uh, for the entire trajectory of this book, which
Took a while to get there.
not for the care, obviously they're doing their things, but for us to learn what that inciting incident was, and I was actually quite shook. But the character I actually fell in love with is like a B character, like it's a main character, but it's definitely like B level main character.
Cyberdine?
Siphonin, yeah.
Okay, so this is another interesting thing we're going to go into, but one of the ways that the writer makes the world feel distinct is one of the cultures, the main one we're dealing with, refers to everyone with she pronouns, regardless of their actual gender, because it's sort of an androgynous culture. And so you're sometimes like they'll mention a character's male, but then continue to refer to them as she. So in his case, he's the only one I actually thought of as male, but all the other characters could have been male, and I visualize them as she. This is actually a question. What is the main character's gender in terms of the body they're in?
I don't know. I honestly, and I hadn't
Right?
even thought about it. Like that, it's weird that you say that because like at no point was I like, I wonder if this a girl body or a boy body. Like I was just like, it's Justice of Torin, it's Breck, it's a host. For me, I was more insulted that it had a bad singing voice. Like I was more concerned with that than the gender. But Will's right. I completely, and it's weird because I didn't think of a lot of them as women, but just like them's. But I'm gonna
Yeah.
use the pronoun she her because that's what the book does. But for like there's a character
Iskaya?
Iskaya who I just thought of as a them. It could have been a man. It could have because there's this idea that this particular race, like group of humans, might just be non-gendered, like they might just be unisex. But you're never actually sure, and I've been led to believe by some cues that they're not. They just choose to be genderless.
At one point late in the book, she's walking through a crowd and she's like, oh, I looked at it like I would have if I was outside the culture. And she does mention that they do have gender, but they just specifically even dress very agendered and they don't really care. So it's one of the, and the thing about it is it's a nice way of the author shocking you into this culture where you're immediately like, oh, this is different. I need to start thinking of this differently. So it's actually kind of a strategic
Yes.
method of writing more than just like, and I'm sure also the author is trying to say something about the arbitrariness of gender and all that. But it was a really nice way too of just as a writing technique, shocking you into, oh, they think about things differently than we do.
It was great. I loved it. That was one of my favorite parts of the book. It took way too long for me to really get invested in the characters and in there. And not to say that they're bad characters. Like I liked Breck slash Justice of Torn the whole way through, but like I realized that I am at heart not fan fiction trash because I don't read enough fan fiction, but that like where you're like, oh my baby boy, you know, like you like, and that's what happened with Seiferton. I was like, oh, my baby boy wants to be a servant again. He loving the
He's the most distinctive character is
He
the thing.
is. He
All
is.
the other characters are just not very distinctive, and especially the main character, like you said, I really liked Justice of Torrance, but or Brecht or S1, or I think it's SLO1. I don't know. Whatever the main character's name you choose to put it as, I really liked her, but like she's not very distinctive.
S119.
ESC-119, yeah. She's not very distinctive in terms of remembering her or what she would be like interacting with somebody outside of certain. And some of that is intentional
Because she's an AI.
because she's an AI and because she's very single-minded, but it does make for a reading experience that's kind of restrained. And so, yeah, distanced very much so. So, I mean, I think it's definitely an interesting choice to have made by the author, but it does make for a reading experience that is like, okay, this is good, and I'm glad we read it. in terms of the lessons I've drawn from it and the experience, but I'm not going to read the sequel, and I probably won't read this author again.
I might read the sequel just because once we got to the point, there's a character, the main character. So first off, this video is going to be similar to our Gilded Wolves video.
That's right. Me and Maria are going to be doing a lot of laughing, flirting stuff. You guys don't understand. From that video, I had to cut a part where Katie is touching Maria's leg and going, "Oh, so smooth." It was weird. It was weird.
I just shaved. Every girl knows this. When you shave your legs, and like many of us have touched each other's legs and been like, "Damn, that's smooth." It's not weird. It happens. Just because men don't see it or do it doesn't. Like, listen. Anyway, what we're gonna do with this is we're not gonna do a blow by blow plot retelling, partially because I just don't have it in me. Like, a lot of stuff happens, and a lot of like the minutia. Like, I have a overarching idea of what happened, but there's a lot of like, to this point, there's a lot of characters whose names I don't fully remember. There's a lot of things that happen where this character pops in and then like disappears and then never heard of again. And so we're gonna do really overarching major events and how they play into the plot. And there's this one major event that happens in the last third. It happens actually, it's in a previous timeline, because this book has like two major timelines it's playing with, and then two other events that are separated from those two major, like it's a lot. Anyway, so we're not going to do that. But this event that happens in the last third, I was like, oh yeah, I'm on board. Fuck that guy up. Like, burn everything. How dare they? Like I finally cared. And honestly, I think it is a detriment to the author that she waited that long for that fucking reveal. And you kind of understood that it was leading to that, but the scene itself I found so much more impactful than a lot of the stuff that led up to it, that I think if she would have moved that further, like maybe the halfway point.
I totally agree, because I was on board with the character at that point. It gives you a sense of depth to the character. Another thing this author does really well is mix action scenes with like the emotionality of the character. There's only like two main action scenes, but in both of them, you're so on board because it means a lot to the character what's happening, and things are falling apart, and like the little moments within it that are really good. This book also does, I think, the thing that the Locked Tomb series does, but it's less of a problem there because that world is more tropey and distinctive, but like it doesn't tell you some basic things that it should until later in the book. And so because the foundation is not solid, it's kind of hard to remember. Like, in a metaphor, the foundation is not solid, so the structure of the house keeps kind of sinking into the ground, and you're not quite sure what the house looks like because it's sinking unevenly and at different points. And like, if the foundation had been stronger, the more weird, ambiguous elements would have been easier to figure out, I think.
I'm going to use your house metaphor, but in a different way. For me, it was like being dropped into a room, a random fucking room of a house, and not being given a layout or anything, but it's a massive fucking house. And I'm like, is this a ranch style? Is it Mediterranean? And I like, you literally just have to walk through rooms of the house, and by virtue of you can't walk through the entire house, like by the time I got to a room that gave me more clarification about something that like I had seen earlier in the house, like you're just piecing it together, and you never see the whole house. She never tells you everything. Like, there's never a world building info dump, which honestly this could have used. Like, take a leaf from Novik's book, like, please. It could have used that, because it literally, I felt like I was lost in a house that, and by the end I'd seen enough of the house that I was like, okay, I can put these things together. But there was still like, I still don't know for the life of me the entire, I could not make you a diagram of what the house.
There's some basic concepts that the book just doesn't want to explain to you, and it makes it a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. Even just a touch more, I think, would have helped. It's a weird thing I think authors do sometimes, that I don't know if if they're doing it specifically or not, but if they are, they need to cut it out.
I found this harder to follow than Harrow the Ninth.
And that book is crazy. I actually would have liked some more, not just connected to Harrow the Ninth, not the same world building thing, but like Harrow the Ninth has like the characters' thoughts are like really weird and LSD at time, and I thought this book would have profited from having a little bit more of that. Maria, before we start the main description of the plot and characters, do we have a Patreon like I mentioned earlier, or was that a non sequitur?
That was not a non sequitur. we do indeed have a Patreon. It's a great place. It's a good time. There's lots of stuff. So not only, as we mentioned before, have we now changed our book club membership, which by virtue also changes our parasocial darling tier. We are doing, for everyone who's a book club member or higher, a second live stream a month with a book of our choosing. But besides that, there's the normal book club where you get to vote and pick and influence a book that we read. We get to interact about it together on live stream. It's a great time. And then I would say a lot of people that are regular and have remained like regular reoccurring, the Discord itself is its own reward. We have people who have had to miss a live stream like several weeks or months in a row, but they've been able to talk about the book in the Discord.
The Discord honestly has such good conversation. Before the live streams, I have to go through the current book and the spoiler thread of it because it's really good to get everyone's thoughts on it, even if they're not going to show up there. And honestly, the live streams are so much fun. That's why I decided to add, or I talked with Maria and we decided to add a second live stream because it's just so much fun talking with people. It's very funny. My mom watches these videos and she's beginning to know our patrons just from the live streams, like what they say and who they are and stuff. And so when I refer to them, she knows them by name. It's a ton of fun. You guys should join. It's, support independent journalism.
Absolutely.
But back to the book. Who is our main character, Maria?
Our main character is called Justice of, two names, Justice of Torin, 1-19, or Breck. Those are the three names you get. And what it is we are in this world. It is a sci-fi future, far, far in the future. Humans have gotten to the point where we have developed into different groups of humans that are now recolonizing other planets of humans. And there is this one group, the Ratchedai, and they are, I don't want to say the British colonialists.
Use the term you explained them to me as, which was just brilliant, and what I'm going to title this video.
What was it?
The tea colonialists.
Yeah, the tea colonialists. Because, like as the British colonialists did, where they were like, good tea versus bad tea. And it's hysterical because the tea the British drink is so far removed from the chai that the Indians that they got it from drink. But anyway, these people, the Ratchedai, they are here to civilize, and they're here to drink good tea. And so they are the tea colonizers. And their entire culture is built around annexing other planets, other systems, and bringing them into the Ratchedai. So at first there's like, we come in, we take you down, then we build you back up, and then you are now citizens, and then after a few generations, you are just Ratchedai. The Ratchedai are the group of people we mentioned who don't deal with gender. Like, it's just not a concern. Their language has no gender to it, as far as pronouns or like feminized words or anything like that. They have a really strong, like, other groups of people think they're kind of brainwashed because it's like strict orders, hierarchies, social relationships.
They have a god emperor called Onomatopoeia and
Ana under Mianai.
The way the narrator says it in the audiobook is really cool, but I cannot remember it. I'm just going to refer to her as God Emperor. And she is in multiple bodies, and she is the ultimate authority. And that's going to become key later. And I thought it was a really cool, interesting world-building detail of how that's expanded on.
Because they are fundamentally expansionist, and they literally, their economy, everything runs on taking over other places. They have incredibly sophisticated technology for this. Part of this is their ships. Their warships and troop carriers are called justices.
There's different classes of warships. There's the justices, the mercies, and the swords, each of which have like different
purposes.
Mercy of Kala or Justice of Torrance is the main character.
I think Mercy isn't actually a warship. I think it is a different kind.
Justices are troop carriers, I think, for example. And one of the things that's sort of irritating, and we don't find this out until like later in the book, is that the warships predate the Ratchedai Empire. And like, this is a world building detail that's sort of important and just dropped later on. And it's actually important to the book as a whole because these
Wait. I did not get that.
It's mentioned a couple times early on, but it's only really explained by Onomatopoeia later in the book when she's talking about how she had to reprogram them. They were originally around beforehand, and they go really attached to their crew and will actually commit suicide.
I didn't take it that way. I took it as they were originally made, it wasn't working, and then she had to reprogram them herself. Because the Ratchedai, she is post the Dyson ball. I took it that the ships had been Dyson Ball Ratchet Eye, and then once, you know, she did her expansion.
This is another world building thing that's not mentioned until literally, I think, like 4/5 of the way through the book, is that the Ratchet Eye have a Dyson sphere, which is like the true Ratchet Eye, and the Ratchet Eye that we're mostly interacting with are people outside that are creating a buffer zone so that the Dyson sphere cannot be touched. But again, it's super annoying because this is not mentioned until like the very end of the book, and it's not like a reveal or a plot twist. It's just a thing that would have been nice to know earlier.
Anyway, they have troop carriers. They're called Justices, and the main character is one of those ships. Now, the ships are the AI on the ship, but they also have ancillaries. And the ancillaries are, during their conquests, they take bodies of people, war prisoners, and then the ship AI will take over the body. Now, this person was still alive and was a thinking, functioning human, and like they defrost you. And as you come back to consciousness, the ship goes in and takes you over. And it's not pleasant for the ship coming into the body, and it's sure as hell not fucking good for the body itself. And and you only get towards the end how much the Ratchet Eye are also split on the fact that this is a really barbaric way to create bodies. And so, like, there are groups of the ancillaries, which are referred to by different things by the decks they live on. So, for instance, the ancillary we're dealing with was on the 1-esque decks, and so she's 1-esque 19. She is the ancillary 19 of the 1-esque deck, and each deck has, I think, 20 ancillaries, so that are numbered.
And so when they conquer a place, those are also like the infantry that go down. And one of the things that's mentioned is that ancillaries, it's a barbaric practice, but they are not barbaric. There's no like looting or pillaging or unnecessary deaths of civilians. Like they're robots. They're very efficient, which is interesting. And you know, it's something that's kind of interesting when you start thinking about more of the automation of wartime. And it actually is important towards what we're going to be talking about the second or first timeline, depending on which ones you want to talk about it. Our main character is two things. She is Justice of Torrance, the ship, but then specifically we are dealing with one of her bodies, which is a little bit separate, Esk One, right? And so there's two timelines, one that happens in the current day and one that happens 20 years beforehand. And the one in the current day is just that body. Her ship has been destroyed. And the one that was 20 years beforehand, it's mostly told through the viewpoint of Esk One, but you also kind of understand what's going on with Justice of Torrance and her other bodies at the same time.
Fascinating setup, really cool. But that's the world we're kind of couched in. And I'm gonna quickly go through the first timeline. Actually, no, I'm gonna set up the start of this premise of the second timeline so you can understand why the first timeline is. So we start this book, and 1-esque 19, the ancillary, who is now the only existing fragment of Justice of Torrance, has been completely separated for 20 years at this point, is on a mission. She has a fetch quest that she has to do, then she has to take the fetch quest item to go do the thing. But basically, she out for some revenge, bros. And you don't get that for a while. You just know she wants an item that this person has. She gets the item, and then she's like, I'm a kill. I'm a under Mianai. Like, we gonna do this. And you're like, okay, why are we killing the Lord of the Ratch? Like, what happened? So there's that, and we'll go more into detail on that timeline. But then you backpedal to 20 years earlier, when she 1-esque 19 was, or 1-esque was the ancillary that was working with Lieutenant On. Lieutenant On was the kind of, I don't know, like governor sent down to this one planet, Shiana system, to deal with them and deal with the annexation. And they're at the point where the wartime stuff has stopped. Everybody is now Ratchet Eye, and they're just governing. And Lieutenant On is very, very tied to her military background, but in the sense that and you don't realize this at first, she's very proud of her position in the military. She's very proud. Like, she believes in the civilizing work of what they're doing, but she's also a good person with a conscience. So much so that the planet that they're on has a divine who is the head of the religion that a group of the Orsians, because there's two groups of people on this planet that the Orsians follow, and the divine is really kind of like influential on this planet, and the divine won't let Lieutenant On leave. Other people want to come and be in charge of this planet. Lieutenant On is like, it's hot, it's muggy, the clothing, like the weather sucks. She wants food and tea. Like she's ready to go, but the divine won't let her because she's like, listen, I trust you. I trust S1. Like, good job, guys. There is tensions between what they call the lower city and the upper city, and basically someone hatches a plot to make Lieutenant On look bad and to cause shit between the lower city, which is the Orsians and who the divine are in charge of, and this upper group of people who the narrator decides to voice as Afrikaans accent and then an African accent.
And I did not realize this cultural nuance because, first of all, it's a hilarious accent that she uses for the upper city, which it sounds like a goose, but I thought it was like a New Zealand accent. And so I couldn't figure out the decision until Maria said, who has some South African heritage.
I was born there. I wouldn't say heritage. I was born there.
She is, as I like to say, African American, and she hates it when I say that, but
yes,
it's true.
I do. So yeah, this rich upper group of people who hold themselves separate and are like, we are the best, have an Afrikaans accent, and then the normal, like the lower city has just an African accent. So adding some political nuance in there for people who are familiar. This whole plot happens, and it was originally designed to make Lieutenant On look bad, but somebody in the lower city found a clue about it and was like, yo, Lieutenant On, this looks really weird. I wanted to bring this to your attention. Lieutenant On was able to start taking things. So when the plan was like hatched, they were like, no, this was planned. Somebody did this, and Lieutenant On had the upper hand. Unfortunately, the person she had the upper hand on was Anna Mianai, who's literally like the Lord of the Ratch.
The God Emperor.
That was who had set her up to make her look bad. And so what ended up happening is she makes the people that were rebelling, she makes Lieutenant On order them to be killed, despite the fact that Lieutenant On just did not want to do that. She didn't want to kill anyone. They were under control. The rebellion was squished like before it even really got started. She was like, no, we'll just send them for re-education, which is like brainwash, and it's fine. And Mianai is like, no, kill them. And so she makes One Ask do it. And this is a pivotal moment for One Ask because there's a moment where she has to think, if Lieutenant On, who I really like and I'm very fond of, had said, no, I'm not going to kill these people, and Anna Andamianai had told me to kill Lieutenant On, would I have done it? And she's like, I don't know if I have a choice in that instance, and I don't know if I like that question. But it is a pivotal moment. It's also a pivotal moment for Lieutenant On, who has only ever been super loyal, super committed, but she is a lesser heritage. The Radishai, are really
British
like
classes.
like, oh, what is your family? Oh, you are a cook's daughter. How terrible! Like that kind of vibe.
One thing I do like about the way that she writes them is that they are like very they're very aware that they're conquering people and being classist, but they're like, yeah, of course we are. How else would we do? There's very little like pretending that they're not doing the thing they're doing.
Yeah.
It's not couched like in moral terms. A lot of the time, they're like, yeah, this is natural. They're not going to care in a couple generations when they're now Ratikai.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things again that the author does really well is she draws you into their culture and makes you understand just how devoted they are to the Empress and like how much like not doing what she says would be a crazy thing.
Yep.
In a way that would seem simplistic in another book that like one of the themes is like, do you do a terrible thing when you're ordered to? But here it feels sort of organic because this really is a fundamental part of their culture.
Lieutenant On is reckoning with the, oh my god, did I have a choice to not kill? Oh, and everybody looks at her badly. Anytime she has a relationship with someone, they're like, oh, are you just doing that to improve your station? And so she's been dealing with a lot of this stuff. She has someone on the planet, Lieutenant, I don't think it's Lieutenant Leskaya.
I thought of her as bitchy hot girl. Because that was, or snooty hot girl, really. I don't remember her name at all because
She was described as handsome and undoubtedly great in bed.
Again, I don't know their genders. Part of the problem is that the voice actress is female, so you do kind of tend to think of everyone as female
I'm
unless
just
she's
gonna use
doing.
she, but my point is I don't remember exactly what her name is, so we'll call her Lieutenant Bitchy Hot. So, like, her and Lieutenant Bitchy Hot talk about the situation. So the first part of this book, S119, or S1, the part of the ship that we are viewing everything through, is very passive. She is an observer and she's retelling this story, but it's basically Lieutenant On's story. So, after she orders everyone to be killed and she's like, oh shit, she talks to Lieutenant Hot Bitch, and they have a conversation, and she was like, did I have a choice? I didn't want to kill those people. Those people shouldn't have been killed. And Lieutenant Hot Bitch is like, listen, this was not the moment to take a stand. If you're going to take a stand, make it for something worth more. But those people were going to die anyway. If you had said no, me and I would have just been like, kill her, and then would have made S1 kill everyone. So, like, what would the point have been? At least you're alive. And then me and I basically is like, you now have to return to the ship. I will send a new lieutenant to take over Shiana system. And so she goes back to the system with S1. And whoever the new lieutenant is will be working with ESK2 or 2ESK. And they go back up onto the ship. People are bitchy. But the big thing that happens on here is you realize you get the confirmation that Anna and Damiani was indeed the fucking plot stirrer. And what you learn, more importantly, is that there are 1,000, and you've known this for a while, like 1,000 bodies of Anna and Damiani. Like, they're all biologically her body, and they were previously all of one mind. But something happened that split Anna and Damiani into two paths, two versions of herself working against each other. And the one version, we'll call it A. A is
The core version?
no, the idealized good one is
Oh,
A.
okay.
We'll
The
call
non-conquering one.
So there's the two versions of Anna and Damiani are now A and B. A is like, oh no, the conquering, we've got to stop the ancillaries, we got to calm all of this shit down. And the other one, B, is like the original, like, no, it is our purpose, it is our blood, we need to, ancillaries, all that stuff. So for henceforth, A and B. Previously, A had got to ESK1, got to Justice of Torin, and was put controls in place so that it would be working for her, A. But B is the one that hatched this plot to get rid of Lieutenant On because she thought Lieutenant On was working for A, or at least was enough on the cusp that easily could fall to A's side. And because
And what's super cool here is that it shouldn't seem weird that there's a schism in a government, but, like, again, because you're in the cultural context, you're like, oh man, what a twist. This person is at war with themselves.
Holy shit.
And
And nobody knows. Nobody knows.
And not even, from what I understand, and again, I may be misunderstanding this because the book is really weird, not all of her knows that they're at war with each other. So she's trying to keep it under wraps, these two Cold War.
It's like 20% of her it has actually split, and the other 80 doesn't know what's going on and is just living life. But the ones that have split into two distinct paths would say is about 20%, because there is this absolute secrecy about it. Like, these two sides can't work against each other in the open, because then people would know. That's why even Justice of Torn didn't fully remember that she had interacted with this other A, Mianai, because A had made it secret, so Justice of Torn not only would fully know, but wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Which enables B to come in and fuck shit up. And B is like, you would fall to talking to Lieutenant On. You would fall to the other side. Lieutenant Hot Bitch is already on that other side. I know that she is. And Lieutenant On is like, listen, have me interrogated, which is basically like they go into your brain and they'll get you to tell the truth. She was like, I've done nothing against the Empire. I have been faithful. I have been loyal. And as far as I know, so has Lieutenant Hot Bitch.
Well, and the other thing is, she doesn't fully understand because, again, to them, it's like they think there's one, so she doesn't even fully get what kind of civil war would be going on between the different Amandiaminar. So it's very interesting that, like, she can't even conceive of, okay, you guys, there are two different people that I need to choose allegiances.
Ama Anda Mianai is like B is like, Justice of Torin, shoot Lieutenant On. And you have to understand how this works. There's Justice of Torin, the entire unity, and Justice of Torin is super, super loyal to her captain. But what nobody realized was possible was that one of the Esks, one of the groups, could have its own favorite, and one Esk's favorite was Lieutenant On. So, and right now, the version of Justice of Torin that is there is one.
It's one that was newly, if I'm remembering correctly, newly created, so she's
Not
kind of
even
slow.
that's part of one Esk. But when they're having this conversation, they're on a different deck, which means it's a completely different decade. When Ama Andamiani first gets on the ship, it says to Justice of Torin, I know your Nar deck, whatever. There's a word. I know your other deck is empty. Put me there. And so the decade that is in charge of that deck is the one that's doing this. One Esk is still up on one Esk deck. And so it says like one Nar. Again, I don't remember what the deck's name was, but we'll call it one Nar because that's what we're doing. One Nar, shoot Lieutenant On. Now, Justice of Torin, who is talking to the captain of the ship, goes, Captain, we have a problem. We need to contain one Esk, because the entirety of Justice of Torin knows that one Esk is super fucking in love, and not in love, but devoted to, I'll say in love in like a platonic way.
In a platonic way. Again, these warships were programmed to basically fall in love with their crews, and they have favorites, and they feel very strongly about it.
They weren't supposed to have separate favorites. But anyway, they know, like Justice of Torin knows, that if we kill Lieutenant On, one Esk is going to go fucking batshit. So they're like, we must contain and sedate one Esk. And the Captain Rugen, is like, ship, why? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then there's one Nar who's like, now I have to kill Lieutenant On, even though part of me, because like while these are separate bits, it is still part of the whole, is like, this isn't gonna go well. Ana Andamiani B is like, no, do it. And she shoots Lieutenant On, who at this point you have, through, not necessarily because of Lieutenant On herself, but through the way other people treat her and how she responds to it, and how other people think about her, you have fallen, you have become fond of.
Well, and also because Esk 1 likes her, and
Yes,
you like Esk 1, so you're like,
On wants to do the right thing, and you feel for that, especially because she didn't, and she now feels bad about it, and she wishes she would have gone back.
One thing I wish the author would have done more, and again, because I'm always into AI, is explore more how having one mind in like 100 bodies or whatever, it works. Because at certain points she's like, I was talking to them, but I was also talking to them at the same time, and I was talking to them.
And I was watching myself have that conversation over there.
She does it a little bit, but not really enough. And especially, it would have been really cool. Like, there's one point where she kind of bounces between two conversations that Justice of Torrance is having at the same time. I thought more could have been done with that to really explore, like, okay, I have a mind that can multitask on a level that a human cannot. And especially in this moment, there's a little bit of it because you start to feel Justice of Torrance kind of splitting apart, because she's like, I didn't realize my bodies could have favorites like that.
This is the best moment of it, because there's three conversations. There's the entirety of Justice of Torrin, the ship, talking to Captain Rugen. Then there is Esk 1 on the Esk 1 deck, and there's a Lieutenant Brick, or it was a B word, we'll call it Lieutenant B, is like, I'd like some tea, or asks one Esk a question, and one Esk is like, one moment. And then like after a while, he's like, or she is like, my guy, you're not, like, what's going on? And one Esk is like, one moment. And like one Esk is freaking out because she's like, oh no, my captain is gonna, I'm a part, a different version of me is gonna shoot my captain. And so she's like running, and then the lieutenant, and so like these three conversations, one Nar, who now has to choose to kill, because she has to go get a gun, so she has to walk, get a gun, and come back. So that's happening, and that thought process is happening. One Esk on the one Esk deck with that other lieutenant who's like, are you going insane? And then Justice of Torrin, who's talking to Captain Rugen. Those three conversations are happening at the same time, and they're cutting between the dialogue of them. And this was the best moment of that. And unfortunately, it never before was this good, and because of what's about to happen, never gets this good again. One Nar comes back, shoots Captain On, and then immediately shoots Ana Andamiani, who happened to have two other bodies on the ship, who wakes up and is like, that bitch got here before me, because in that moment, Ana Andamiani B realizes that A got to Torrin before her. And that's why this one now just killed her. And so it's just like, it was such a good scene. All the different Justice of Torrens are now like, okay, we've got to get our shit together. We're trying to do different things.
Because immediately Anamanyanyar decides, okay, I'm going to breach the heat shield of the ship and basically make it self-explode. And the other thing is that she can disconnect all of Justice of Torrance's things through a jammer. And so it's a very awesome scene where you get the sense of like all of her Justice of Torrance's bodies working together to get, like, they start handing each other weapons. They understand that there's a civil war going on because certain of her bodies haven't been activated yet that Anamanyar can activate. And like there's a great sense of just urgency to it.
The new ones that will be activated won't have any of the memory of what has just happened, which means they'll come live and just listen to Anna and Mianai B, and then the rest of them are working for A. And the main Justice of Torren says to 1-19, get into an escape pod and go talk to Anna and Mianai on this location, because that's the one we work for. That's A. And tell her what's happening. And 1-19 is the new body. It's hysterical because the medic that put 19 in this new body picked a body that can't sing. And one of the idiosyncrasies you learn about this decade is that 1S really likes singing, like, and getting songs, and she sings all the time. She previously had a captain who really liked music and would play, and so she started learning songs.
Literally about 1,000 years before. That's how long-lived these ships are.
Started learning songs to be able to connect, and since, even though she doesn't have that captain anymore, obviously, she's still interacting with that, and so she's got a shit voice. But anyway, so she jumps into an escape pod, she jets off, she jumps through a gate, because here you don't like warp speed to different locations. There are gates you can get through that will then allow you to get to
I think the major ships can jump, but they like to go through the jump gates.
So she has to, in her little pod, go through the gate. As she's going through the gate, she sees a flash of light, and then she's off. And then she realizes, oh shit, Anna Mianai B blew me up. Just destroyed me. Like, she didn't realize as she was escaping that that's what had fucking happened. So not only did she just lose her favorite person, she's dead. She, who used to be a ship, bunch of ancillary bodies, cameras, she could monitor people. All of this shit is now one human body, limited to the capabilities of one human. She can only see in one direction now. Very disorienting.
One of the annoying things, and you're not going to get this from how we're describing the plot, but this happens about halfway through the book. It's one of the best parts.
It's in the last third that you get this revelation.
And this is probably the moment where you're most on her side, and after this you care about her. But the thing is that you don't really realize for the first half to 2/3 of the book that this has happened to Esk-1, and like that's part of why she acts the way she does, is she doesn't quite have all of her faculties about her. And I really would have liked if she had moved forward that information, because it would have made her less of an opaque character, and some of her idiosyncrasies would have been less mysterious and more like, oh, okay, she's not functioning fully in the way that she should, because she makes certain decisions that she doesn't understand, and she knows she can't quite access everything.
And it really, like, it shouldn't have been in the last third, because you learn about this. So you learn about it once they actually get to the planet where she's gonna kill. Like, those two things happen around the same time. So it's literally like the last third of the book. It really is just a shit place to put this. Because again, Lieutenant On was killed, and 1-Esk went, nope, and killed Anna and Mianai, and I was like, fuck yeah, 1-Esk, fuck yeah. They just killed your lady, your friend, your person. Like, my God. Damn. And I needed that. I needed to be rooting for 1-Esk the whole time that way, and I wasn't. Because you don't know what her plan is for so much of the book. You have no idea what she's fucking working towards. To put this in perspective, there's 23 chapters in this book. You start getting her goal, like, I think in chapter 10 or like 8 or 9, you learn that she wants to kill Anna and Mianai. But you don't learn why until like chapter 16.
It's annoying. It should have been earlier, and she should have started the book with a much more clearly sense of fragmentation, so you're more like, okay, what is going on? Because again, it mostly just seems like she's being mysterious in the first half of the book, and it's not quite that.
She ends up getting found on a different planet of like really weird humans who have been like, the normal human form ain't great. I'm gonna have tentacles, I'm gonna have 6 arms, maybe no legs, a lot of technology implants. But she stays there. She gets recouped. They send her on her way. And she spends 20 years, number one, like the first 10, learning how to be by herself, mourning everything. And then the later half of that being like, I shall get revenge. And it is at this point that I have to explain the Gadan incident. 1,000 years before that, before this stuff I just told you, there had been the annexation that was happening was the Gadan solar system. And for some reason, they were being particularly fucking violent there. Like the Ratch were just really going to town. And they got like the 8 major Gadan, or the 25 major Gadan people, and they would bring them onto a ship to deal with them. They open the ship, and suddenly there are guns. There's a huge thing about weapons checks, shields, all this stuff. And basically, if you have a weapon, it should get picked up on the shields, and through the sensors and everything. But the 25 Gadan guys like had secret weapons, secret, and they get there and they cause shit. They just like start taking people out, killing people.
Well, okay, so another thing is that the Ratchet Eye, one of the reasons they're so powerful is they have personal shields that are basically unbreakable. They're just super, super powerful and can't be defeated. So for a gun to shoot through them is like unprecedented.
And so this gun not only is undetectable, but it's gonna get there. The Gadan people got this from this group of aliens that name starts with a P.
It is kind of cool though that basically the aliens are treated as like this bizarre thing that nobody understands, and like, why do they do things? They're aliens. We don't know, and we can't deal with them.
There was a group of aliens who viewed humans as lesser, and then very recently gave them an elevation to significant, which meant no more violence unless it was in specific cases. So the Gadan teamed up with the P aliens. That's who gave them these guns. So they're from this other alien group. It causes chaos, but one gun goes missing. And our girl, 1ESC19, realizes that this medic who used to be on this one station had it. Once the medic realized what she had, because the medic collected a lot of Gadan paraphernalia and collectibles, and ended up with the gun from the missing, the one of the 25, the one that was missing. And once she realized what she had, she realized, oh no, this is an incredible weapon. If the Ratchet Eye knew I had this, they would absolutely fucking come for me. So she runs. She just bolts. 1ESC19, by looking at her apartment, is able to guess what she had, why she ran, and has spent 10 years tracking this woman or this person down to get this gun to kill Anna Andamianai.
Or a few of her bodies is basically the most she can.
The other important thing about the Gadan thing is that was what caused the split in Anna Andamianai. They were so violent. They decimated. They didn't take them in. They didn't make them citizens. They just nuked this group of people. This entire solar system doesn't exist. And people in the military were horrified, because the whole point of their annexations, the reasons the soldiers and the captains could justify their actions, was because of the greater good of civilizing people. And once they were Ratchet Eye, once they were part of the group, they would be thankful, and they would thank them generations down the line. If you just kill everyone, that justification goes right out the fucking window. And that's what caused the split in Anna Andamianai. This terrible thing happened, and how do you reckon with it? Well, 20% of her split into 2 separate directions. One was like, nah, we commit. A was like, no. We need to change the way we live. We need to have a fundamental restructuring. And these 2 groups are working against each other in secret. So that is a fundamental, pivotal moment in their history.
At this time, we're also introduced. Okay, we're actually introduced to him at the beginning of the book, but this is the original timeline he exists in. Is Cydin, who is like
Cydin,
who is like kind of a shitty person who Justice of Torrance doesn't really like that much. He's very classist and kind of snooty, and like he's not one of her favorites.
So he was on the ship that those people fucked up, and so everybody assumed Lieutenant Cydin was dead, because his ship is the one that, Sword of Naftas, or Justice of Naftas, was blown up when the 25 guys with guns appeared on the ship. And so everybody assumed Cydin was dead. On the planet where the person with the gun is, because again, 1ESC19 is like, I need to get this gun. I've been tracking this person. Just so happens to, on this planet, find Lieutenant Cydin. passed out drunk, addicted to kef, which is a drug.
1,000 years later.
1,000 years later. 1,000 years later. What happened was Cydin ended up getting jetted out of a pod and frozen, and then, like, 10 years ago, some amount of time before, was awakened to find society is completely changed. Annexations aren't happening. Her house is the house that she had that was super well connected and she had a lot of money is gone. She has no money. She's penniless. She's basically worthless. And she turned to drugs. She left the military. She was gonna have to do the aptitudes test again. It was a whole thing. She left it. Thus, 1S19 finds her passed out, dying of hypothermia, and for some reason stops and saves Cydin's life. Again, she didn't like Cydin. Cydin wasn't one of her favorites. She was happy to see her go off to Sword of Naftas.
And she doesn't know why she's doing this. She is like, I didn't like him. I don't know why. And then after that point, she starts taking care of him insofar as she keeps him alive, but she also treats him really shitty, which is hilarious and just really fun because, like, he's not a likable person at this point.
She now has Cydin. She has to drag him along on her thing. Bunch of misadventures. They end up finding the lady or the person that has the gun. 1S19 tells her story. And it sucked because, like, that's when they should have told us the full story. That's when they should have finished it, because that's in, like, chapter 8 or 9. She tells this person the full story, and that's what motivates this person to be like, okay, you can have the gun, and, you know, I don't think you'll be successful killing Anna and Mianai, but you can try. Don't let them come back and find me. I don't want this to get connected back to me. And that would have been the moment, because at that point we would have been in the world long enough, it would have felt like stuff, and it would have, like, kept you rooting for everything after that point. They get the gun. Her and Cydin leave. Cydin is now off Kef, but wants to be back on Kef, and is a hobo, does a bad thing.
He sells her ship for drugs.
But he doesn't end up getting the drugs. Like, he sells the ship, intends to get the drugs, but then when he wakes up, after 1S19 found out he sold their flyer for drugs, she just left him. And he had assumed she was there for him, like, to bring him back to the wretch. So he starts following her and is like, you can't leave me, da 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 da. And eventually, somehow, they get themselves into a position where he's kind of hanging onto a bridge, a very high glass bridge in the air. He fell off, and she tries to save him, and it ends up happening that the only way to even attempt to save him is to fall with him. So she jumps off a bridge to save fucking Cydin's life. Ends up getting way more hurt than he does. They wakes up in a medical facility, and he's like, I'm gonna stay with you. I don't know fully what you're doing, but in Cydin's head, 1S19 is a human, is a Radachai, and is working for Amanda Mianai. He thinks she's like special unit. Like undercover, real deep undercover.
Yeah, this is a pivot point where he goes from being shitty to being like, he really likes her. She saved his life. She's done all this stuff for him. He is super loyal at this point, and it's so cute.
He also mentions that when he woke up, he's so fucking isolated. Everyone he knows is dead. Even the one things that should have been alive and outlived him and outlived this event were the ships he'd worked on. The two of them. Justice of Tauren and Sword of Naftas. Both are gone, motherfucker. They got destroyed, so he literally has nothing. Meanwhile, you know that Justice of Tauren is sitting right across from him, just not letting him know that, you know, hey, I do know you. You're alive, like I'm alive. They end up getting off planet, and he decides to act as her servant.
She originally tells people he's her servant to kind of screw with him, and then he is like, okay, no, that's fine, I will act like that. He's terrible at it at first, but then he does it, and it's because before this point he has been so contemptuous and so upper class about things that it's like, okay, he really has kind of turned a new leaf, even though he would get back on Kef if he had a chance.
It's so nice because, like, he becomes such a good servant. At some point somebody tries buying him from her, which is just great. They get to the planet that she has picked to be the one where she confronts Amma and Mianai. They come in. She's pretending to be a tourist from this other system named Brech. He comes in and is like, I'm Cydin. And they're like, oh, you finally returned. You know, you did bad when you abandoned everything. And he was like, I would like to appeal it. So they get there. Their covers work for a little bit. But then there's a conversation that they have with an official. Because the other thing I have to say is the station that they're on is completely monitored. You say anything anywhere, it is not only heard, but the station can read your reactions and your vital signs. So the station, somebody mentions Justice of Torin, which, you know, 1S19 was not expecting.
She has a very mild reaction that the computer, though, is like, I've built enough of a character for you to know what that means.
Lieutenant Cydin is also a big, like, it's a war hero, someone from 1,000 years ago who's essentially was mythized, is also there. So Ama Anamianai was already looking at this thing, and now once that was said, has focused in on everything. The other thing to mention is Lieutenant Hotbitch is now Port Authority Inspector Hotbitch.
And she really loved Ord.
Yeah, she has a pin on her one cuff that is a memorial for Lieutenant On, and it's so sweet. The confrontation happens where like Ama Anamiana is like, no, we're gonna arrest you, we're gonna bring you in, and you're gonna talk to us. And there's two Ama Anamianas that they are now talking to. At this point, Sifadin still doesn't know what's going on, and Ama Anamiana is like
hilarious.
And again, we have an A and a B in this situation, and they're like, Justice of Torin, why are you doing this? Why are you here? And Sifadin's like, what? That's not Justice of Torin. That's Breck. And they're like, no. That is an ancillary of Justice of Torin. It is here for a purpose. What are you doing? She's like, I got my gun, I'm gonna shoot you. And she says out loud, and again, everything is being monitored by station and recording, and is like, you're in civil war with yourself. You destroyed the old me and killed Lieutenant On, and I'm here to fuck you up. Civil war, baby. And immediately they have to cut one of the Ama-Anamianais, cuts communication so that message can't get to the rest of the world. Because if it does, civil war will start. Because again, 80% of the rest of the Ama-Anamianais don't know that this split has happened, and they're like, no, we can't let this leave here, blah, blah, blah. And she goes to shoot one of them. She points at the one on the left, and then the one on the left starts singing a song from like 100 years ago when they took over this one group of people that there's no way they should know. And she realizes, oh, that's A. So she turns to the one on the right and she shoots him because that's B. And A is like, oh, good, blah, blah, blah. You know, what are we doing? And A tries to be like, you're on my side. And 1S19 is like, I ain't on nobody's side but my own. I'm here for my revenge. I will shoot you just as easily as I shoot anyone else. Because basically, Ama Anamianai is now, the goal now is to make sure this message doesn't fucking leave this station. And one of the ways to do that is to blow the station up before it gets connected back to anything, which it would do the same way it did with Justice of Torin by taking down its heat shield and letting its engines just blow up the planet. Or the station. So there's a really fantastic action scene of them being like, no, and like there's too many Ama-Anamianais, and people are like, oh no, there's two groups of them that are giving me different orders, and their like minds are breaking.
Again, this is like an existential crisis for them, that their god is at war with itself. And you also get to see Esk-1 like just shoot people, and they're all surprised because she has the gun, but also she's an ancillary, so she doesn't miss. And nobody's seen an ancillary for years at this point. And it's like, it's great because then also you're really in her viewpoint of what's happening, and you can feel her. The motion is mixed with the action, which is super cool. But what happens is that they're able to stop the Amanmendiars leaving the station. And this is one thing I wasn't quite clear on, but I couldn't quite figure out, or it didn't feel quite natural to me, how quickly these people turned on Amandiar to save the station. Like, to me, if like that's their god emperor, then if the station...
I think it was because the one, A, the good one, was like, no, don't let anyone get on the... Because the reason A was going to the escape area was to make sure nobody got off. 1S19 didn't trust that one either. And so like there was the ones that were like trying to get off planet, and then because there was that whole moment where security, she was like, go talk to that guy, and security goes, talks to the other Ama Anamianai, who's like, do not let any of me get on any fucking ships, like you cannot let us off this station. And they're like, but those Ama Anamianai told me to take them off this to my brain does a heckin' break. That's why, because there is a version that's like, no, these people are correct.
Half of God is telling them to do
half
something.
Of God is telling us not to let this happen. It's a fantastic scene. I'm not going to go into detail, but one Ask-19 manages to stop it. And there's a couple of really touching scenes in this.
I was going to say, this is one of my favorite scenes happens here.
There's 3 really emotional scenes for me. I'm not going to describe them in detail in case one of them is yours, so you can do it. When she reconnects with the young girl who was on oars, when she talks to a Lieutenant Hot Bitch and says, like, it's me, I'm me. But that one's very brief. But more importantly, the conversation with Mercy of
Kala.
Oh my god. What a great conversation.
She's on the shuttle. She's trying to stop she's telling all of the ships, like, hey, don't let any of the Empress on you. And she sees that on her shuttle outside are latched on 4 of the Empresses, and they're breaking in, and she can't stop them. And meanwhile, she's having a conversation with Mercy of Kala.
To clarify, the reason she had to get on the ship to do this, and she couldn't, is because communications are down, and she had to get far enough out of the communication bubble to talk with the ships.
I loved this scene because you can tell it's like 2 warships talking to each other, and that they're sort of on the same page, but not fully saying a thing. Like, there's a shorthand there. And it's really touching in a way, because Mercy Okala mentions that, like, she doesn't have ancillaries anymore and she misses them. And yet Esk-1 is an ancillary and she's missing her ship. So they're like 2 different halves that are missing each other. And she also implicitly trusts Esk-1 in a way that's really kind of cool, in that, like, these warships have a buddy relationship. Mm-hmm. Actually, one of the most touching moments is that, and this happened earlier with Cydin, which is once he knows that she is Justice of Torrance and she's being kind of bitchy to him, but he still likes her, he calls her ship. And, like, that's what they used to call the ship when they were on it. So, like, it's this weird, like, bond that they, like, he knows her, she's his ship now, and he was her crew. And, like, that's really touching.
Also, when Seyfedin takes it in stride, he learns that she's an ancillary of Justice of Torrance, and is like, nope, I'm staying with her. That's it. I am with you. Where you go, I go. And it's just...
And in the moment where she's talking with Mercy of Kala, it's like, it's this great ticking clock of the Empress trying to break into the shuttle, and she knows she's not going to make it out. And Mercy of Kala is like, I can't get to you in time. And yet there's a really good tension with the emotionality of it at the same time. And, like, it's one of the points in the book that really works really well, but it happens so late.
The other thing is the idea that these ships have their own, because it's like, she tells Justice of Kala that, like, hey, Anamiani, there's multiple versions in there at war with themselves. And the ship's like, I kind of knew that. And I haven't been happy for a while.
Yeah, I've been displeased by this or something. She states it really in an understated way that's really funny.
But using emotion, and you're like, oh man, these ships listen because they're programmed to, but they also make decisions. And there's a moment where earlier in the book where they state you cannot have something that makes decisions without emotions, because it will make terrible decisions. You have to have emotions there to judge decisions. Otherwise, it's not decision making.
I would have liked if that had been explained earlier, because it would have gone some way to explaining why the robots feel a little bit more human. Again, going back to my peevishness about robots not feeling like robots, these felt a little too human, but I would have liked if that had been explained and all of that stuff.
So it's just fantastic of, like, these 2 entities reconnecting and being like, yes, there's something displeasing here. And how she kind of wins Justice of Kala over is being like, your captain's on the station, and if you let any Anandamani on you, it will blow up that station. And Mercy of Kala is like, not today, bitch. She ends up getting really fucking hurt because, like, stuff happens. But she stops the Andamianis for getting on. She wakes up a week later. Seyfedin's there, like, hey, how you doing? They had to regrow her lungs. Like, she didn't have no lungs. And she's like, why am I awake? I'm an ancillary. I'm disposable. Why am I awake? And they're like, nobody thinks of you that way anymore. You're not an ancillary to another thing that can be replaced. You are the last of it. Like, you, of course we revived you. And basically she has a conversation. She has a conversation with a lot of people. A touching one with Captain Hot Bitch, where Captain Hot Bitch gives her the pin, the little gold pin for Captain Avon as a memorial. And they have a really, like, they both feel like they failed Captain Avon, and they both feel like the other one did more and worked more, but they both blame themselves, and it was just really nice. But anyway, the book ends after a conversation with the 5-year-old version, because these bodies have to grow, of Anna and Yanai.
That was so funny.
Who is like, listen, you don't trust me, and fair enough, I am like, as much as you were 1-esque and you had a favorite, you were still part of Justice of Torn, just as I am still part of all of the Anandamianites. Like, I cannot destroy the evil. But what it does say is, like, I want you to be my conscious. I want you to be my armed conscious. Here is the gun that can kill me back. I want you to captain Mercy of Kala. I want you to captain that ship. I want you to take Siphonin as your lieutenant. And she's like, absolutely, absolutely not. But she ends up having a conversation with Mercy of Kala, who's like, I need a captain. And she's like, don't you want to captain yourself? She's like, no, my crew needs to see someone. Like, there has to be someone there. And Siphodin's like, your captain is tired and needs rest. And Kala is like, she can come on the ship and rest. And it's just this funny thing because they basically ignore.
Everyone's railroading her into being a captain. It's really funny.
And that's how the book ends. She gets on the ship and she's now going to be a captain. And like, I love it because it feels more like a partnership between her and the ship. And Siphodin's like, nope, this is what we're doing. Like, and it's like, I'll do whatever you want. You don't want to be captain, I won't. But like, it's just great. Anyway, and so like the last third of the book was so much more enjoyable for me than the first 2/3 because, number one, all the emotional beats happen there. You learn all of the things that give everything else in the book context. Like, I like this book so much more in retrospect than I did reading it the first time.
Yeah, because it's weighted towards that part of it, and you just forget about them wandering in the wastes for a while and having enigmatic conversations with an old lady.
I think if I reread it, I would like it more, you know, because I now have that context to make me root for the characters, and Siphodin is now a little precious baby boy.
I would have liked a little bit more explanation, like if they had a conversation at the end in the following action of like why he is so devoted to her, because like you can kind of infer it, but like it doesn't totally make sense he would have that hard of a turn to being like her trusted person. Like I felt like a little bit more could have been done to justify that. But he's a fun character. He's the most distinctive character, and that's part of why the book works in that last third.
One of the reasons why I think everything should have been moved forward is you lose the part where they actually bond.
Yeah.
They fall off they fall off the bridge, and he's like, oh shit, you nearly killed yourself for me. I'm willing to hang around and see what happens with you. I think I have a shot at being better around you. But they actually bond, and really, like, you realize, and I didn't realize this at first, it was a year since they've known each other by the time you get to the end of the book. And we missed like 8 months of that year.
Yeah, it's true. It's just gone. Like, it just happens in like a page or two of summary.
Unfortunately, that is where they really, and this is if I had time to read fan fiction, that's what I'd be. I just give me those 8 months of bonding and them becoming closer and learning about each other and being able to see things.
And him going from folding her clothes badly to well, and like what that's like.
Being able to read her and see when she's upset or agitated in a way that nobody else can.
Yeah, because it's sweet. Later in the book, he can tell when she's upset. And it's interesting because there's a certain amount of disconnect between her mind and her body, and that she'll say her body is doing a thing, or even she'll be inwardly upset, and then Siphodin will be like, why are you upset? And you don't get any body cues from her, but it kind of works because it shows this distance.
He learns it, and we miss all of him learning it, which makes it, when he's able to do it, you're like, but wasn't that, because again, I didn't fully realize that it had been like a year that they'd been hanging out together, and you miss that. And I think those kinds of emotional beats, which again happen in that last third, would have been way better sprinkled further. And if we would have had more of them, because the first part of the book of them arguing and like him being a dick, her being a dick back, like literally both dicks, is funny. And like while you're reading it, you're like, ha ha ha, but you don't walk away being like, yes, I'm rooting for these two. I'm not rooting for either of you. I don't really know what either of you are doing.
And the stuff in the previous, because the previous 20 years and the current are interwoven. That stuff is also at its most boring at that point, where it just feels like it's very sedate, and she is the most of just a viewpoint and not a character, as she will be at any other point in the book. In certain ways, I don't think a sequel would have the same problems that this book has, in that you are more interested in the characters, but I'm also hesitant to read more because I just don't feel like it will be able to bring the emotions as much.
I think I am gonna read them. I just finished like last week or the week before the Cruel Prince series, that whole thing, the Folk of Air.
Ironically enough, Maria has enough time to read, but not to do these videos is the funny part, because otherwise you guys would be getting more videos.
It really, like, guys, he's at one point, Will was like, oh, do you need a break between reading books? I was like, no, I would die. Like, when we're between books and we haven't decided what we're reading next, I'm like, Will, what are we reading next? Will, what are we reading next? Because, like, I don't know why, but my brain, if I am, like, doing laundry with nothing to listen to, my brain is like, this is wrong. I'm so used to just constantly listening. So, like, I love it. I go on my walks, I listen. I come in on my breakfast, I listen. Like, if I don't have it, I'm gonna find
But right now, I'm taking away from her gardening time by doing this video. Like, there's no, and that's like her only downtime. Again, it's kind of funny because we would say that like she's gonna read a sequel and then do like a live stream with people who have read it. No, there's no time.
So eventually I will, like, I think once the holiday, I don't know. I can't, I'm a busy lady. I work once my work season calms down.
Maria's a real adult, guys. She has like real things to do.
It's a lot. Like, everything happened at once. I got a boyfriend. My parents moved up. We started this podcast. It all happened very, very.
My girlfriend takes up a bunch of my time too.
Why do you say things to be sad? Like,
So it's
why?
fun bumming you out.
No, I don't like it. It's not nice. You dick. Anyway, I would read these because the end of this book, I'm very, like, I'm now committed to the characters. Not only is now Seifertin baby boy, but I'm now like, yeah, let's fuck shit up. 1Ask19. Like, you have been on an emotional journey. You are fueled by grief for the wrong Lieutenant On and society. Like, I am.
You've also been kind of forced to be more of a person now than before. Like, she's had to go through these experiences that have made her more of a person. So you read, you do recon, you read, and if it's good, I'll go and read the second one too.
Perfect. We'll do that.
Have you guys read the second one though? Tell us in the comments if it does become more. I mean, this video is going to do horrible because it's sci-fi and it's less well-known sci-fi, and sci-fi does horrible on our channel.
Nobody cares. Like, nobody. Nona the Ninth, which is actually like it's a series that's doing very well. That video is doing poop.
This book also has the problem that it has extremely generic cover art. Like, I like how the cover art looks, but like I've seen like 30 books that look like two vague spaceships. Like, it's very undistinctive, so I don't think people will actually click on the video very much. But, you know, let us know what you guys think in the comments. Again, I didn't hate this book. I actually quite like it when I was reading it and in retrospect, but when I put it down, I was like, dude, am I going to go back to this? Or like, what was even happening?
I like it so much more now after having finished it 10, 15 minutes before we started this video.
I finished it this morning. I had like 15 minutes to go because I had a weirdly busy week. Yeah, let us know in the comments, guys. And think about joining our Patreon. Again, even if your book doesn't get picked, I've gotten a list of books from people's nominations that I think are interesting that we're going to get to at some point. We love you, our parasocial darlings.
Bye.